But speaking of unicorns, for those of you that haven't been following cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, blockchain, and all of the terms that are associated with our industry, we're up to a $100 billion market cap, so we're 100 unicorns strong. Bitcoin just shy of $3,000. So rather exciting, and just to touch on that bubble period when, oh, there's the deck, perfect. All right, here we go. I'm going to start with this video before we jump back into that, because I like to set context. I assume not everybody is an expert in this field, and it's a technology that's so different than most of the things that we look at because no analogies apply. I can't say this is the Uber of housekeepers or the Uber for dog walkers. So I like to take us back in time because we all understand the internet, but we haven't for that long. Do we have volume?
With the A and then the ring around it?
At?
See, that's what I said. Katie said she thought it was about.
Yeah. Oh.
But I'd never heard it. I'd never heard it said. I'd always seen the mark, but never heard it said. And then it sounded stupid when I said it. Violence at NBC.
I heard a big fight up in the lunchroom the other week.
There it is. Violence at NBC. GE.com. I mean,
well, Allison should know.
What is internet anyway?
The point being is this is the Today Show in 1994. By 1995, Newsweek was saying the internet was going to fail. It was, a fad, really only used by criminals, and it didn't really have any purpose. And by 2000, when the internet bubble had burst, there were no VCs in the world, no investors that would take meetings with internet companies in 2001 and really 2002. So it wasn't that long ago this was a technology that was forgotten or written off. So what have you heard about Bitcoin? You may have heard it's insecure. You've heard about Mt. Gox and hacking and people losing their money. The protocol itself has never failed. When there's been a problem where someone has lost money, it's never been at the protocol layer, it's been at the application layer. So that's like saying if someone's email got hacked, that email as a protocol doesn't work. And the network itself, is 100 times larger than all of Google's global infrastructure combined. It's probably the most secure computing system the world has ever seen. You may have heard it's only used by bad people doing bad things. Well, much like that internet thing, when new technologies emerge, extremely disruptive technologies, sometimes the earliest adopters are going to be the fringe users. And this, like the internet, was no different. Obviously, the industry has matured far beyond that, and that is a small portion of what this technology is used for. But like all things, it's going to be used for both good and bad. And the benefits of this technology far outweigh the negatives. And you may have heard, oh, it went up in price and it's crashed. Well, we're at all-time highs again right now. And if you had watched this over the course of the last few years and you weren't paying attention only to the price, which is kind of the primary barometer of sentiment, what you would have seen is every fundamental metric that matters was up and to the right except for the price. So this doesn't come as any surprise to me. We've been seeing exponential growth. So what is it? It's fixed supply. There'll never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. You have a lot of other cryptocurrencies. It's programmable. There's no governing body. There's no one that runs or controls Bitcoin. It's a peer-to-peer network. And as a result of that, you can't shut it off. The only way to shut it down is to shut off the internet forever. And it's a public source of truth, and you can't counterfeit any of them. So for the first time in human history, we can transmit value from one place to another with no middlemen. We can do it instantly with complete transparency and negligible fees. The big macro trend here, and what's important about all that, is this concept of decentralization. Do you know what happens if you cut the leg off a spider? It walks with a limp. If you cut another leg off, more of a limp, its head, it's dead. But if you do that with a starfish, and you cut the leg off, that leg grows back. But if you cut off any part of that star with the center, that leg becomes an entirely new starfish. If you cut that into 5 pieces correctly, it'll become 5 starfish. This is the best example of a decentralized system occurring in nature. And so this is one of the macro trends that's changing the world right now, is that we're moving from centralized systems to distributed and decentralized systems. But this isn't the only sort of macro trend, and you'll see, you've probably seen this sort of chart before. The largest taxi company in the world is Uber, though they don't own any cars. The largest media company in the world is Facebook, but it doesn't make any content. The largest retailer in the world is Alibaba, but it has no inventory. Airbnb, the largest provider of accommodations, but has no rooms or inventory. And Bitcoin is the fastest growing bank in the world with no branches or employees. So these macro trends that are coming together, one is software, this idea of creating proprietary software and the movement to open source. That combined with the idea that we used to want to own things, we wanted to own our houses, we wanted to own our cars, and this migration to shared ownership, maximizing or utilizing the things that exist, combined with centralization moving to decentralization. These are the three macro trends that are driving, I think, most of the changes that are occurring in the world today. So we've talked briefly about price. Again, Bitcoin isn't the only one. Ethereum is not far behind in terms of market cap. Ethereum's at 24 billion. You could have bought Ethereum last January, not 3 months ago, but 18 months ago, for around $1 in Ether. It's trading at $260 right now. It's been a 260x return over the course of the last 18 months. Bitcoin around that same time was only trading at a few $100s. So we've seen exponential growth, but not just in these areas. Ripple's got over a $10 billion market cap and a handful of others that are unicorns as well. And this is the very beginning. And the question is, is this a bubble? It clearly is a bubble. The question is, when does it correct? It might go a lot higher before you see some correction because like any market, the pendulum swings and it's going to be going up and down. But over the long run, if true value is being created, it should continue to appreciate. And so when we talk about a number like 100 billion, it goes, wow, that's a pretty big number having come from 10 billion only that not too long ago. But if you think about the internet in 1999 and early 2000, which was mostly just public companies in the United States, you had some here in Europe, but the height of the internet market cap prior to the crash was 7 trillion. And that was when it was primarily a US phenomenon. Now that you've got Asia and India and Latin America and the internet being this giant global phenomenon and huge value be creating and usage around the world, that market should be 30, 50, 100 trillion today. So what people are investing in is the potential of this technology. And when you think about it from that perspective, we obviously still have a long ways to go, and I tell most people that aren't active in this space, I don't tell anyone ever to buy anything. I say go buy $10 worth, learn how to use it. I can talk to you about email until I'm blue in the face, but go send your own message. I'm here to give you information so you can make your own informed decisions. But in general, it's a binary outcome in these cases. Buy it and forget about it for 10 years and assume you're going to lose all your money, or don't invest anything you can't afford. So Bitcoin is just one of many currencies. So I like to think of the blockchain as the way to describe the enabling technology, and Bitcoin just having been the first app. So what are the big things that are happening right now? Where's the traction occurring? In part is the digital currency side around the developing world. I've been approached many times over the years, from Americans that think they actually knew something about this technology because they had read, one fake news story that was poorly written by a journalist describing their opinions of what this is, and they'd be like, Brock, why should I want Bitcoin? Trying to be confrontational. And my response always was, you shouldn't. And they'd be like, what do you mean? And I go, well, it's not for you. And this would really, a little reverse psychology. They're like, what do you mean not for me? I go, well, do you have a bank account? And they're like, yeah. And I go, I'm guessing you got a piece of plastic in your pocket, too, that lets you conveniently pay for things. And you've got rule of law here that's here in theory to protect you and often will, and faith in the system. And of the 200 currencies in the world, you've got one that everyone wants more of. It's going to save you 1 or 2%, or if you believed in it, it might be a speculative investment opportunity, but this isn't for you. Let's go south of the border to Latin America. Let's go look at Southeast Asia. Let's look at Africa. Did you know there's 3 billion people on the planet that have zero financial services whatsoever? And another 2 billion people with limited financial services. So in the same way that Africa leapfrogged wired telecommunications and went to wireless, this is the sort of trend that we're seeing. So you've got smartphones in abundance emerging everywhere. This is not just a first world thing. The developing world is ending up on cheap Android devices. You've got, in places like Venezuela, more than Argentina, hyperinflation. These are places where the Argentinian economy collapses once every 10 years on average, and your money becomes worthless. They learn to buy electronics or cows as a store of value. Obviously, you've had some interesting things here in Cyprus. The mobile money, the most advanced payment market in the world is Kenya. Most people don't know that, but it's a product called M-Pesa. Over 60% of payments are done with mobile phones using a digital currency, which is a prepaid cell phone minute. You've got the removal of cash, which is a trend that's occurring in India and other places as well. You've got currency controls laws that restrict the movement of money in the same way that the internet we use today, I like to describe as the internet of knowledge and communications, democratize the way that data moves everywhere. The blockchain is democratizing value and trust amongst many other things. So this year feels like kind of the year where digital currency is going mainstream, in the same way that, Moby, is when electronic music kind of went mainstream. So these are the things that are happening on the, call it the consumer adoption side, and 2017 is feeling like a huge year for our industry. Then on the enterprise or large incumbent side, this is more in the developed world. This is a chart over 2014 and 2015 and 2016 of some of the, call it the financial service providers that came into the space. And here is how I'm kind of envisioning this now. Because we were dealing with Bitcoin having been a financial product, the financial industry was the first to say, hey, I think there might be use for this technology. But because you're dealing with trillions of dollars of money and infrastructure and things moving around, you don't just deploy these things quickly. So we've been working with the largest financial institutions in the world for years, working on proof of concepts and testing things. And I feel that this is also the first year where these ideas, these concepts, become pilots and in some cases become commercialized. So, 2017 is like a huge year for the blockchain, both on, call it the enterprise incumbent side of the world, as well as on the consumer side. So couldn't be more excited, not surprised by all the activity and increase in price. And this is, I think, as everybody already knows, a global phenomenon. These are just the companies that are venture backed all over the world. And this is the way that the capital had come in. And so this is interesting. In 2014, we had taken in more more cash as an industry than the internet did in 1995. We were comparable in 2015 to the internet in 1996. And at those times, it cost you, millions of dollars to make a website to sell shoes online. You didn't have open source software. You didn't have SaaS products. You didn't have Amazon Web Services. It was very expensive. You can build businesses with tens of thousands of dollars. So that capital has been deployed the last couple of years into the infrastructure, that basic infrastructure you needed for this to be successful. In the same way the internet wasn't very useful to most people until you had a browser and an email client and a search engine and content and things to buy. It takes time for those bridges and roads and tunnels to be developed. And that's what we were doing with the capital that came in these first 3 years. But because you weren't seeing the mass adoption occurring on the consumer level, and because it was taking a long time to deploy the enterprise applications in a way that generated material revenue, there had been no exits. And so the generalist venture capitalists, the VCs, flatlined, as you can see here in 2016, which created an interesting dilemma. That being that the number of entrepreneurs voting with their feet and coming into this space continued to accelerate, but the amount of capital available did not. So you have every major VC in the world has been investing in this space over the last whatever years it's been, with the exception of Sequoia. We'll see where they end up on the test of time. So I want to migrate this now into the trend that I think is most interesting right now, specifically, and I think to also Bulgaria in particular, or all of Eastern Europe, and that is this concept of an ICO. In the same way you have an IPO, an initial public offering, we've been doing ICOs. I was a founding board member of Mastercoin. We did the first ICO in the summer of 2013, so we designed this model back in the spring of 2013. And it wasn't something that it hadn't become popular in any meaningful way over 2014 and 2015. But last year, as a result of the generalist VCs not continuing to up the ante, entrepreneurs, being the persistent, tenacious, phenomenal, opportunistic human beings that they are, said, I'm going to raise my money from my own community. And they would go out and do crowd sales, selling tokens, app coins, to raise money for their projects. And we had a lot of them. We had 64 of those last year, raising over $100 million. And these businesses are often raising $10 or $20 million in a matter of 5 or 10 minutes. I just raised the first venture fund on the blockchain where I democratized venture capital so that anyone in the world could invest in my fund. With the exception of the US, you had to be accredited. And that was a combination of using crowdfunding laws, regulation S&D specifically. We created this closed-end fund out of Singapore, where the Monetary Authority of Singapore had provided guidance on tokens, and then did this all on the blockchain. So it was democratized in a way that not just the financial elite had access. I raised it from almost 1,000 LPs. We raised the money in about 16 minutes, the whole fund. It took 6 hours because of a glitch. But we raised an entire fund in a matter of minutes. And the fund's ownership interest, or the security, trades on exchanges. So it's an entirely liquid venture fund that's democratized and available to everyone. I think this changes the game for everything. I think stock exchanges, as you know them, are all going to go away. Because why would I want to go list on the New York Stock Exchange, a local market, when I can list on a global market? Why would I want to use an exchange that only operates from 9 to 4 on weekdays when I can have something that operates 24/7 by 365? And why would I want something that's running on old legacy technology that was built for a world of paper when I can have something cheap, fast, and efficient? So this is what's happening. This trend's taking off. We'll probably see 300 ICOs this year, raising 600. It's probably going to break $1 billion would be my current guess. This is a friend Williams' predictions. But I want to talk to you about my most recent project. I'm a founder of this and head of strategy, which the white paper came out yesterday, less than 24 hours ago. And so I would like to introduce you to EOS. Our logo is pretty interesting too. This is sacred geometry, and it represents the heart. This is a new sacred geometric figure that was only discovered about a year ago. And so to talk to you about kind of how the evolution of our industry has evolved, you had Bitcoin, which is obviously, I'm chairman of the Bitcoin Foundation, a huge supporter of Bitcoin and everything going on in that ecosystem, and continue to be a large holder of Bitcoin. But it was the first, it solved the Byzantine generals problem, but a primitive protocol. And it does that very, very well. Though we have some scaling issues that are easy to resolve, the problem is achieving consensus as a community. It's actually not the technology. Then along came Ethereum that provided a much more advanced protocol specifically for smart contract applications. Right now we're focused on, call it high performance. And the reason why is the world, as we talk about these proof of concepts that need to be taken out into pilots and commercialized, right now you do 20,000 transfers per second around like currencies. Facebook is getting 52,000 likes a second. You've got exchanges and prediction markets doing 100,000 transactions a second. Most of the systems that we use today, need high transactional throughput. And the problem today is Bitcoin can only do about 3 transactions a second. Ethereum, maybe 30, being generous, and I'm a huge supporter of the Ethereum ecosystem. I was one of the largest investors in the crowd sale and have been the first VC to support companies in this space, so I still love both of these things. But what we can do is rather interesting. So one of my partners in this business, Daniel Larimar, invented the concept of a DAC, or a DAO, the Decentralized Autonomous Organization. He also invented the term, or the concept of proof of stake, Bitcoin and Ethereum running on mining using proof of work. This is delegated proof of stake. So he created the first decentralized exchange. He launched BitShares, which was the first proof of stake blockchain in 2014. He launched BitShares 2.0, which is called Graphene, in 2015. And then he created Steam It, if you've been on Steam last year. And Steam is a decentralized version of Reddit. And if you go to steamit.com, what you'll notice is it's a decentralized application, meaning it's not owned or controlled or run by anyone. It operates similar to something like Bitcoin. But it's indistinguishable from its centralized counterparts. You can't tell the difference between this decentralized website and a centralized system. And the problem we've had with most of these types of systems previously is they were slow, they were clunky. They weren't as good as the centralized counterparts, and most of us as consumers don't really care if it's decentralized. And so this is his new project, EOS. If you look at Ethereum and Bitcoin's current blockchain market share, Daniel Larimar's work has got about 2/3 market share. His prior products are twice the size of Bitcoin and Ethereum combined in terms of transactions today. And what EOS is trying to fill the middle here. You've got a giant decentralized computer. If you think that to Apple, you've got all the app layer of everything that everyone's built. And EOS is going to be the operating system that sits in between, that provides all of the functionality that you'll need. The white paper came out yesterday, so you can find that on Steemit, which is the main, probably, media site where everyone in blockchain gets their news. And the way that he did this in terms of providing scaling is the same way that computing works. He's applied parallel processing to blockchains, and so that we scale horizontally. It's not a ridiculously complicated concept, but it's something that no one had done yet, and this will be in the roadmap, I think, of every blockchain going forward. He just happens to be far ahead of everyone. And it's got a built-in governance system, lots of feature sets there. I'm just going to skip through some of this because it's not that important. Team is filled with incredible groups, the best lineup of investors in the ecosystem you could possibly have, and our ICO will be coming up soon. But I'd like to give everyone a call to action. You know, what can you do if any of this is interesting and you aren't yet on this bandwagon? As I said, go out and buy, you know, $10 worth of Bitcoin, convert some of that into Ethereum, you know, start to play with these tools. Go buy something online, send money to someone internationally, and watch how much better this is in Western Union. And then teach someone else. I mean, the reason I give these speeches, the reason I do this is because we may have the greatest technology in the world that has the opportunity to democratize everything, but unless everyone knows about it, it's not going to happen. So that would be my advice to you. And if you have any other questions for me in the future, Brock.ai is my artificial intelligent machine learning version of myself. God forbid I'm to get hit by a car. You'll still be able to ask me questions for the rest of time. The singularity is not just near, it might be here. Thank you.